Hey OpenXML developers, with version 3.1.04 I've added a new interesting little commandlet, Get-DocxMetrics, and this commandlet returns a bunch of interesting properties and information about a docx. Sometimes you want to find certain things about the documents. Maybe you want to find out what styles are used in the document and what the style hierarchy is. If you have a bunch of content controls in the document, you might want to know what they are. If you have code that is specifically for testing markup that has tracked revisions in it, then you might want to run this code just on documents that have tracked revisions, particularly under development. Probably want to run this on all kinds of documents, but when you're under development, you want to run it on just documents that have tracked revisions. Well, if you're like me, you probably have a fairly large set of sample documents that you use for testing in development, and this commandlet can help you select those documents that are interesting to you for your particular testing scenario. Well, let's get right with it and let's take a look at this commandlet. In order to make use of the Get-DocxMetrics commandlet, you need to have version 3.1.04 or later of PowerTools for OpenXML. You can get it at powertools.codeplex.com. If you have questions about how to install PowerTools for OpenXML, take a look at this screencast at this link, and that will answer all of your questions. It's pretty easy. I already have that version of PowerTools installed on this computer, so let's get right to it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a document that has some tracked revisions in it. So I'll use the new docx commandlet and I'll call it tracked.docx, and I'll tell it I want some revision tracking in there. I can now type Get-DocxMetrics, and it reports a number of properties and counts of things in this document. And if we look right here, we can see revision tracking is set to true. Sometimes you might want to filter documents, finding just those documents that are of interest to you. For instance, you might want to test some code associated with revision tracking. So you want to initially just test this code on documents that contain revision tracking. So you can use the where object feature of PowerShell in order to just get those documents that have tracked revisions. In this directory, there are an awful lot of documents. I can write a PowerShell one-liner that looks like this, where I do directory star.docx and pipe that into the where object feature of PowerShell, this question mark right here, and I can filter based on whether the document has tracked revisions. And when we get done, we can see that there is just this one document, revision tracking.docx, that contains tracked revisions. Another interesting feature of this is that it enables us to get the style hierarchy for a document. So I'll do Get-DocxMetrics and I'll look at the headings.docx. Let's scroll up here, and we can see that the style hierarchy has an XML document in it. We can then do something here. We can put a $ parenthesis around there and tell it we want to see the style hierarchy. And this is how PowerShell displays XML in a certain way. So what we can do now is come up to this line and tell it we want to format XML. And there it gives us the XML of the style hierarchy. We can see that there's some character styles that derive from default paragraph font. We can see the heading styles, they derive from the normal style, and so on. One thing that's interesting is looking at the content controls in a document. Let's take a look at a document. This document has some nested content controls. I'll turn on design mode so that we can see that there's a content control around the table, there's content controls around the rows, there are some rich text content controls in there, and so on. Let's see what the Get-DocxMetrics cmdlet can tell us about this document. I tell it I want to format the XML and Get-DocxMetrics, and we want content controls nested, and we want to look at the content controls. And we get a bit of XML out of the property there that gets returned by Get-DocxMetrics, and it tells us for each part in the document what are the content controls in that part, and if they are nested, it shows us how they are nested. Of course, the main document part can contain content controls, heading parts can contain content controls, and etc. So it needs to report this content control hierarchy for each one of the parts. And here you can see the content type here. It's the main document part content type. In the HTML Converter 01 example that is there in Power Tools for OpenXML, there are some Hebrew and Asian documents. So if I go Get-DocxMetrics and look at Hebrew 01, one thing that we can see that there's text both in HEIL and in US. And also up here we can see that the complex script character count is 2,306 and that there are 145 runs that contain complex script. This resume template document that contains Asian characters, so let's look at that one. And here we can see that it has text that is in Chinese. And we can also see that there are East Asian characters and East Asian runs in this document. Well, that's all that I'm going to show you in this video, short and sweet. See you next time.